Howdy, y'all. Rowan here. I just a few minutes ago finished Stoner by John Williams. Um, this is my book for Booktube Spin, the first round of Booktube Spin that Rick McDonnell has organized. So I'm making this standalone video about this book for that purpose, but I also had told myself that when I read a book that I would think of as like a 5-star book, a book that I could see ranking among my favorite books, that I would make a video about it and talk about it. And so in both of those respects, Stoner deserves to be talked about. Let's get over the technical stuff first. So this book was published in 1965. It was the third of 4 novels written by John Williams. Williams is kind of, I think, now thought of as like a one-novel guy. Like, this book is so much more popular than any of his other books. He did win the National Book Award for his final book, Augustus. So he's not a one-book writer. And this is of such quality that I can only imagine that his other books must be of great quality as well. He, for a long time, was a professor at the University of Denver, where he taught one of my, not my advisor, but one of the professors that I worked most closely with when I was in college, Carrie Waterman, who is a fantastic person, but she studied under John Williams, and said when I posted this on Instagram or Facebook or something that I was reading this, she commented and was like, "I read that book when it came out because I studied under him." How cool is that? It's a book who I've avoided reading for a long time because it didn't sound interesting to me. The synopsis, the back of the book story, it's interesting because now, having read it, they basically give the whole plot of the book away on the back of the book, all up through the end. But the story of the book, to try and not spoil as much as possible, is that in the opening paragraph you learn that this man, William Stoner, has died. Basically, you get an obituary for him in this opening paragraph. Let me just read this opening paragraph because I think it really is an interesting way to set the tone for the book. William Stoner entered the University of Missouri as a freshman in the year 1910 at the age of 19. 8 years later, during the height of World War I, he received his Doctor of Philosophy degree and accepted an instructorship at the same university, where he taught until his death in 1956. He did not rise above the rank of assistant professor, and few students remember him with any sharpness after they had taken his courses. When he died, his colleagues made a memorial contribution of a medieval manuscript to the university library. This manuscript may still be found in the rare books collection, bearing the inscription, "Presented to the Library of the University of Missouri in memory of William Stoner, Department of English," by his colleagues. And that is the framework of the whole novel. We just learn of the life of William Stoner, his beginnings as the only child of a farm family in rural Missouri. He's sent to the university to study agriculture, but instead falls in love with English literature, stays on as a postgraduate student, gets his master's degree and ultimately his PhD, and becomes a professor at this same school, and spends the rest of his life there teaching. We see him fall in love with a woman named Edith, and they marry, and it's one of the most brutally depressing literary marriages that I've ever read. My sort of take on it is that she's clearly just the kind of person who's not meant to be with other people. She recoils from him constantly, and every interaction that they have is just painful. It's truly depressing, their relationship. There's a line, I'm not going to be able to find it, but after their wedding, or they go to the place where they're having their honeymoon, and don't have sex for the first time. And there's this line where it's like Stoner goes to bed on that night knowing that his marriage is a failure already. But they stay married until his death, 40 years later. He has a child with her named Grace, who his wife sort of weaponizes her, turns her against him, Edith is a really sort of nasty character, probably problematic in the way that it's sort of a man writing a woman as being this, like, the ultimate bitch kind of character. But it didn't feel that way for me. It felt very much like all of the characters in this book, it's clear that the author has sympathy for them, even when they do awful things. The back of the book sort of makes you think that the sort of central plot of the story is going to revolve around an affair. The affair doesn't actually happen until over 2/3 of the way through the book, and it only occupies the span of maybe 40 pages of the 300 or so pages of the book. But it is, to me, the most memorable section of the book, because Stoner falls in love with a graduate student when he's in his early 40s, and they have like a year-long romance, and he has this sort of moment of realization that he's never really loved anyone or been loved by anyone before, which is a very profoundly sad thing to realize, especially that late in life. And ultimately, of course, like all things in his life, the relationship ends in disappointment, as basically the scandalous nature of it, once it's known to people who want to weaponize it against them, they're forced to choose between each other and, the normalcy of their lives. And she leaves him, and it's very heartbreaking. This book books don't make me tear up very often, but there was a section in a part in this that made me well up many years after she has left and he never sees her again. He reads that her dissertation has been published as a book, and he tracks it down and acquires it and discovers that it's dedicated to him, and that really got me in the feelies. Just the idea that two people can love each other but aren't either allowed to be or supposed to be together is so tragic. And I, as a person who's gone through marriage and divorce, feel a lot of kinship to that. Getting heavy. There are so many passages of this book that say something so universal and so eloquently. I regularly was like putting the book down and letting the language sort of wash over me because I was just amazed by it. It made me, I didn't underline it, but it made me want to start underlining books again, which is a practice I haven't held since I was a student. Just looking up the Goodreads quotes for this book, there are so many great ones. In his 43rd year, William Stoner learned what others much younger had learned before him, that the person one loves at first is not the person one loves at last, and that love is not an end, but a process through which one person attempts to know another. Just, like, man. Williams was a poet as well as a novelist. His poetry, I don't think, is regarded that well or canonized or anything like that, but his command of language, his ability to speak with such beauty and such precision, it's clear that he is a poet. I saw a lot of myself in this book. I think that people who hold a great love of literature will see a lot of themselves in this book. I also feel like people who have experienced not tragedy, but disappointment in their life in great ways will find an intense kinship with William Stoner, whose life is a seemingly series of disappointments. Here's another quote from the Goodreads page. He was 42 years old, and he could see nothing before him that he wished to enjoy, and little behind him that he cared to remember. His marriage is a failure. His professorship is a failure. He finds love and then loses it. As someone who has gone through a lot of disappointments in life, I really felt that. And the end of the book, not to give too much away, obviously it's told in the opening sentence of the book that William Stoner dies in the 50s. At the end of the book, as he's dying, he's reflecting upon his life. He keeps asking himself, what did you expect? Which is such a brutal thought to have in those moments. I don't want to ruin the very end of the book, the final page or so, because it also made me well up a bit. And it's about the impact that we leave on this world. How even in our disappointments, we shape the world around us. We shape the people around us. And they in turn shape the people around them. There's no way to live a life in vacuum. The elegance and the beauty he sort of shows in that thought really is a great way to send off the book. If you are a fan of literature, of serious literature, you owe it to yourself to read this book. Since NYRB put it out in the mid-2000s, I think it's gained a sort of esteem. It's widely regarded. It's got like over 100,000 ratings on Goodreads, and it has like a 4.3 average, which is out of this world. I know it sounds dull, but it's not. It is so good, so moving. It is essential. It's an essential piece of literature. Especially, I think, for people who are beyond young adulthood. I think that if I had read this book when I first learned about it, when I was in my early 20s, I wouldn't have appreciated it the way I do now. You need to have had life grind you down a bit to really feel this book in your bones. And I did. I was constantly hesitant to read it more. I actually didn't read it at all yesterday, because when I would think about it, it would just feel so overwhelmingly sad in my bones to me. But then when I did read it, I relished it. It was a lovely experience. So I can't recommend this book enough. I think it's Clifford Sargent at Better Than Food, I believe, said that this is a perfect novel. I don't know if such a thing exists, but sure, why not? I think that's a fine statement. So yeah, Stoner by John Williams. As far as the Booktube spin goes, the spin for book number 2 has already occurred, and instead of making a whole new 20-book list, I just swapped this one out for another book in the same category. The category was books I should have read a long time ago, so I placed in The Unbearable Lightness of Being by Milan Kundera. But ultimately, the wheel was spun, and the book that it chose for me was Leaving the Sea, which is a story collection by Ben Marcus, which was in the category of books I haven't read by people authors that I love. So I'll be reading that and making a video about that for in the near future. Yeah, I'm still in that sort of reverie that you get after you read something that's truly remarkable. So hopefully when I edit this, I can take out a lot of the stares off into the distance and whatnot as I gather my thoughts. Yeah, thanks for watching, and check out some of my other videos. If you've read Stoner, leave a comment, tell me if you liked it. Tell me other things that you think I would like, based on the fact that I liked this. And don't just recommend books that are about professors having affairs with their students. Because that is like a thing. Like, isn't it? It's such a disgrace. And the corrections, it's a thing. Anyways, thanks for watching.